I'm having problems when cutting simple shapes. The final object doesn't correspond with the SVG original file. It is clear now that the feed rate is too fast and I'm losing steps, but when I'm using the recommended settings on the developer's software, I'm still struggling to get a consistent accuracy. The part I just cut out was a test template for a larger maker slide end plate. I want to increase the cutting capacity of the machine, but as you can see, I'm 4 millimeters out from the expected measurement. After making sure the feed rate is adjusted to the recommended setting for the material, I cut a test square which should measure 90 millimeters in either direction. I'm still finding errors and I don't want to further reduce the feed rate, as if it takes twice as long to cut. Not only is this time I cannot film in the workshop because of the noise, but also it would be quicker and more accurate to do some of these tasks by hand. I set up a dial gauge to check if 1 millimeter moves the specified amount on both the X and Y axis. What I am finding is while switching directions, there is an addition to the measurement. That is 0.05 of a mil on the Y axis and 0.3 of a mil on the X axis. I think some of the previous cutting jobs have put the belt under load and possibly stretched it. I actually have another piece of timing belt. This is a T2.5 from a RepRap 3D printer. This is sold on eBay as a more durable alternative for that particular model. If I try and zoom in a bit, you can see the reinforcement between each teeth, about 5. These are strands of metal that are going through. This is in comparison to this stuff here, which is reinforced with fiberglass. It's just too stretchy. I'm sure if I had something to test it, I can show you. But anyway, I can't use this machine until I sort this out. And what I'm going to do is actually buy several meters of this stuff and some new pulleys. While I'm waiting for those things to be delivered, I paint the wasteboard of the CNC machine. So I'm just going to paint the bed of the CNC machine with wet rot wood hardener to take the MDF to HDF. This is just going to prolong the life of the working surface. Obviously read the instructions because I had to shake it before I started applying it. I've got a few ideas of raising the cutting head, so potentially in the future I won't even be getting anywhere near this, but just in case, this should just increase the durability of the surface. I should have really done this before assembling the machine, so I could have got all around it and into the holes where the insert nuts are, but this will have to do. After a few days, the parts I had ordered arrived in the post. I could not find pulleys which would fit on the shaft of the stepper motors I had, so I bought slightly smaller ones and went about drilling these to 1/4 inch. This is quite a simple task to do if you happen to have a lathe. I then realised I didn't know how deep I was meant to go, so I put a bit of tape on the drill bit. I'm going to do this to 3 pulleys. This is going to be on the X-axis and the Y-axis. The Z-axis I'm going to leave as it is because it's using a looped belt. So after I undid the original belt, I undid the grub screw on the pulley and replaced it with the one that I just drilled on the lathe. This is a T2.5 pulley with 16 teeth. Accessing the sides of the y-axis are a lot easier than doing the next stage. As you can see, you have plenty of room to work. I'm making sure the grub screw is making contact with the part of the shaft which is grounded flat. I'm trying to do this without taking the machine apart into too many of its original components. The motor on the x-axis was removed from the carriage and the pulley replaced while it was still wired up. I had put something underneath it just in case I'd let it slip. I had bought 5 meters of the new belt, which was made from polyurethane and reinforced with metal wire. It's very easy to cut and place on the y-axis. The x-axis on the other hand is a little bit more fiddly, and I found just bending the end of the belt maybe a centimetre or two just helped the process of feeding it through the carriage. This was really fiddly. I found what kind of made this a little bit easier to do was to kind of get it in position and then move the carriage a little bit until I could get a pair of pliers to pull it out. So you want to be a little bit careful at this stage that you don't catch any of the wires between the timing belts. And then you just tighten all the belts up. So I placed a V-bit into the spindle of the CNC machine and etched a square which was 100 by 100 millimeters and then measured it. That was 0.4 of a mil off, but I decided I could live with that. I'm going to cut a relief of the silhouette of the end of the maker slide. I can't be bothered to cut the entire thing out, so instead if I just allow the machine to maybe cut a mil into the MDF, I can then measure from that to see whether it would have actually cut correctly if had I let the program complete. I'm just going to set this to 0.5 of a mil. I'm using a 1/8 of an inch up spiral bit and set the program to cut on the outside of the vector line. When I measured this, it was 3 millimeters off along the y-axis and 2 millimeters off along the x-axis. You can see what the measurement should have been, and I'm just checking the feed rate, which is almost set to half the speed designated for MDF. I double checked the bit size on the software, which was correct, put the V-bit back into the spindle, changed the cutting line on path with the vector drawing, and this came out only a fraction of a millimeter off. I'm starting to wonder whether my standards are dropping, as a fraction of a millimeter is now almost half a mil. I'm not really sure what to do next. I'm happy with the new belt, but the problem is almost like something out of quantum mechanics. I even tried using a 1/4 inch bit and still had the same problem cutting on the outside of the vector file. Whenever I cut on path with a V-bit, it seems to be a little bit more accurate, or quite a bit more accurate to be fair. However, when cutting on the outside of a SVG file that I've imported, the final effect is actually not satisfactory. I'm going to have to go away and think about this and do a bit more research. At least I know, and now you know, it is quite easy to replace the belt with something that's a little bit more durable and in theory will last a bit longer, but it hasn't seemed to solve the problems I thought it would. I have a new channel called Educating Savas where you will find this video with Nathan from Opentronic, along with discussions and other tangential videos which don't fit the current channel format. I will be migrating future CNC related videos there.